The new iPad Pro is so good, I didn't just buy one, I bought two. What's going on, guys? My name's David Tomic and welcome back to the channel. That first statement is only a small little lie. Technically, I did buy two iPad Pros with the M1 chip. However, I didn't buy two for myself. Obviously, I only need one. The second was for my fiance. The iPad Pro that you see behind me is a phenomenal device. Now, as some of you may know, on this channel we talk about architecture and technology. We've spoken about the old iPad previously, which I used to have, and I've passed that on now to upgrade to this beast. I've recommended the iPad Pro as the #1 iPad pick out of the entire range for every architect for a number of reasons on previous videos. Today, I want to break it down into a very different method. I'm going to do your typical pros and cons of the iPad from an architect's point of view, and then I'm also going to share with you the architectural uses of an iPad Pro, especially with the new M1 chip. This new M1 chip has actually revolutionized how quick and powerful the iPad is. It's a little bit mind-boggling, but it is phenomenal, and it's something that we definitely needed to step towards as we move towards a more mobile, universal way of thinking and a more mobile working from home situation with the crazy world we live in today. From the get-go, the first thing I want to point out is that the iPad Pro cannot handle any architectural software. Not because it isn't powerful enough, but for the simple fact that ArchiCAD, Revit, AutoCAD, whatever you can name, doesn't actually have an app on the iPad. They all have their different apps on the iPad, which are more for just viewing programs and viewing files, but you can't actually do anything. As an ArchiCAD user myself, I would love to see ArchiCAD be able to run on the new iPad Pro. I think just that simple integration with an M1 chip, an iPad Pro, and being able to have that versatility and freedom anywhere would make this the perfect device. So I purchased the iPad Pro 11-inch. I didn't purchase the 12.9-inch for the simple fact that this is what I do most of the day as an architect. I have either the iPad in my hand, or with this keyboard, I have it magically stuck onto the keyboard. I think as a product for architects, the 11-inch iPad is a much better choice, personally speaking, than the 12.9-inch for the simple reason it is the perfect size. You can carry this iPad, no issues whatsoever. It's just under a kilo, I think. Don't quote me. This isn't a full tech review. This is an architect's interpretation of what you need in an iPad. I think the weight, the size makes it completely versatile. I can sit this on my desk, do whatever I need. I can take it to meetings, carry it to and from. But the best bit is, and the absolute best thing is about this whole iPad Pro, besides the new M1 chip, is the simple ease and effectiveness of taking it off the keyboard. Now, as you saw there, that demonstration was so easy, it was so seamless, and it was something that just seems like should have been around forever. The simple fact that you can just click on your iPad, you have a full keyboard, you can take it off, you have a tablet, you have a drawing board, it's perfect. Now, I'll put the iPad on the side for the minute and we'll talk about the keyboard in itself. So, the keyboard in itself is phenomenal. I had a little bit of doubt that the keyboard would be any good, but the keyboard has a decent amount of travel on the trackpad. It's backlit, the trackpad is so smooth, feels just like a MacBook does. The only con of the keyboard is the simple fact it doesn't bend far enough. So for example, if I sit this way and I'm looking at it perfectly in line, it is perfect. However, if you drop it lower and are looking from a higher angle, the angle of the iPad just isn't there. So unfortunately, the keyboard doesn't bend far enough back, but overall it is an incredibly well designed product. I do see it getting a little bit scratched, a little bit worn pretty quickly. So this is maybe about a week old now, if that. I probably don't have it for much longer than a week, and it's already starting to show some scuff marks on the bottom. It will definitely get damaged as time progresses. Now, as we take the iPad off the keyboard and it becomes a regular iPad again, it does a phenomenal job. The Apple Pencil 2, which is an old edition, I'm not gonna go into any detail because, well, it does exactly what it needs to do, and it's been doing it phenomenally for years. So I don't think there's too much more they can do with this pencil to make it any better. I'm sure they will, but for now, it is a great utensil and an accessory that is a must-have for any architect with an iPad. This iPad, once you pull it off, becomes the perfect drawing board in my opinion. You can simply pull up a drawing, start marking up all over it in a meeting with a client and just get all the information down as quickly as you need to. Now, with the incorporation of the new M1 chip, it is actually a beast of a product. To put this into perspective, this 4K rendering machine behind me cost about $3,500 just for the tower. My iMac Pro at work does a decent job, but this still beats it hands down. There is one PDF in particular, from one job in particular, that has so many hatches and so many different layers on it that every single computer I've ever tried to open it up on struggles. Every time I used to open it up on my old iPad, the iPad crashed. Every time I opened up on last generation's 12.9-inch iPad Pro, that iPad crashed. I opened that document up on this iPad. When I first got it, it was part of my meeting. I wasn't even thinking about it. It took a few seconds for me to realize that there was no glitching. Every single hatch was loaded instantly, and I didn't even notice that I was opening one of the most complex PDF files that no computer I've used to date could handle. I know that seems like a very silly comparison. It's a PDF, you should be fine, it should open. But some of the PDFs become so complex with so many layers, so many hatches. I'm sure you guys have experienced it, that computers struggle to load it and you just have to sit there and wait for it to load one hatch, load another layer. The last pro I'll go into is the simple fact that, we'll click that back on there, it lasts forever. Now, I'm not kidding when I say this. The iPad Pro with the new M1 chip has some serious engineering behind it. I'll wake up, it'll be fully charged 100%, ready to go for my day. My day starts at 5:30 in the morning, but I don't start using my iPad till about 7:30 in the morning. I won't stop using my iPad till about 9 p.m. at night at the earliest. Now, I've done this for a week straight just to make sure it wasn't a fluke, that it didn't last, and it's gonna die on me every other day. Every single day, using it from 7:30 in the morning, probably having it open at work for the 8-hour workday, for 5 hours straight, just lit up, typing on it, using it like normal, and then typing emails and responding to everybody and running my businesses at night time. That iPad battery only fell down to about 15 to 17% every single night. Now, that is phenomenal. I can't use my laptop for more than 8 hours without it dying. However, the M1 chip has been able to revolutionize how it manages its battery and its performance, so it doesn't chew up as much power as you would think. Overall, the battery life has been great. The performance is exceptional. Now, it isn't all sunshine and rainbows with this iPad, unfortunately. There are a few cons. The first is just basic. For example, the camera is positioned exactly where your hand goes for the power button. So if I bring this iPad back and just simply showcase that the power button is up here and the camera is just there, every time I go to unlock it, it'll tell me that the camera is covered and it can't detect my face. So every time I go to open it, my hand's over the iPad, perfectly placed. It's just giving me that silly little arrow and saying, nope, your face can't be detected and you're gonna have to type in your PIN. So the positioning of the camera on the iPad isn't really an M1 thing, it isn't really an architect thing, it's just annoying to be honest. Now, as an architect who uses ArchiCAD 24/7, I'm so ingrained to just tapping that escape key and trying to get out of whatever I'm using. Unfortunately, the iPad Pro keyboard does not have an escape key. It's not a con to the iPad itself, it's just a design flaw that I think as architects and architectural students, we're going to be in that constant habit of tapping the wrong button. The keyboard in itself is also very difficult to open. You need two hands to be able to open this thing properly because it's just so heavy at the start. Once you crank it open a little bit, it's perfectly fine, but it's just that little bit too heavy. As you can tell, my cons aren't really to do with the physical iPad itself or with anything to do with architecture. Because so far, I've found no errors in the iPad Pro that have led me to come up with some sort of negative response to tell you guys that no, don't buy this iPad because it's no good. Literally, the only thing it can't do is it can't run ArchiCAD, it can't run Revit, but maybe we'll get there one day, I don't know. I truly am hoping we will get there one day. Now, from an architectural point of view and from an architect's point of view, the reason I purchased an iPad Pro was for the simple fact that it is a workhorse. For anything that you have to do in an office environment, it is phenomenal. So even if you're not an architecture student or if you're not an architect, no matter what profession you're in, I think an iPad is becoming one of those staple accessories in the professional industry. As an architect though, there is a minimum bundle that I would recommend. You can simply buy the iPad Pro with the pencil combination, or you can go to the full bundle like I bought with the iPad Pro, the pencil and the keyboard. Having that freedom and luxury of all three really makes it the perfect tool as an architect. So I'll give you an example. If I'm sitting in a meeting with a client, it's quite often that I'm typing the minutes of the meeting, but I'm also having that iPad open, needing to draw all over the plans so I can mark it up and then change those comments on ArchiCAD later. Now, in a typical environment without an iPad, you'd have a full set of A1 plans, marking up all over them, a sketch pad and paper, writing down minutes, and it just takes forever. Now I can actually have this iPad on the stand, open up with a keyboard, typing my minutes on the side with the pencil, scribbling all over the drawings as we talk through the project. Now I think this is extremely useful because it saves time. This is one of the factors that if you're an architect, I'm sure you can all relate, time is very valuable because we never have enough time in the day to complete everything we need to do. So simply saving ourselves an hour, 2 or 3 is incredible and worth the money. For me, I can now type my minutes of the meeting in the meeting, mark up all the documentation in the meeting and flick them off to either myself, a drafts person, the client, whoever needs that information as soon as that meeting is over. So I no longer have to go back to my desk, type up all those minutes, try and remember what it was about, and then mark up all the documentation, scan it through, take a photo of it, or do whatever I needed to do to get it onto a digital version to be able to send away. Here and now with the iPad Pro, it's powerful enough that I can have documentation open, I can have a PDF document open, I can have everything open in the background, quickly flicking through and marking up all over the drawings at the same time. I think the last meeting I tested this in, I saved myself 2 hours. Now I've done it previously in the past, so I know that I've saved myself 2 hours. It was a very long meeting. I was typing the minutes, I was marking the drawings up and liaising with the clients about every single change. Now usually I'd have to go back and do all that work again. Now I simply saved myself 2 hours, which is incredible. It means I could get on with the next project, I could keep designing and I could keep creating. So as an administrative tool, it is incredible. Just on a side note, if anybody tells you that Australia is always hot, it is not. It is freezing cold today. So seriously, thank you to Cuts for sending over a bunch of hoodies for me to just get me through this winter because it is cold in Australia. It is not hot all the time. And whoever says is 100% lying to you. If you want to grab one of these Cuts jumpers or anything else from Cuts, you'll notice that I've been wearing a black shirt in every single one of my videos for years. That's because I've been working with Cuts for such a long time and I truly believe in the product. I get nothing out of this. So if you want to go down below, hit the link for the Cuts shirts, you can grab yourself a shirt that lasts years. I literally have about 40 of them in my cupboard and every single one has held up for so long. I know they're a little bit pricey, but again, they're just worth it in my personal opinion. And when you're down there, there is a number of other links for architects, architecture students, and everybody in the industry. If there's something that you need or if you need assistance with anything, there's a Discord link down below that you can chat to me at any point in time and I'll help you out as much as I can. The community on Discord is also growing. We're slowly building a little architectural community on there that is able to help each other out. There's been a couple questions asked from different people all over the world, and it's just incredible to see this community growing and this community coming together. It makes me looking at a camera and talking to a camera feel a little bit more real. Otherwise, it just feels like I'm a little bit crazy talking to a camera in a room all by myself. So I'd appreciate it if you check out the links down below, hit the subscribe button if you want to continue seeing these videos, and also hit the like button to help with the YouTube algorithm. There's only 3 apps I really use on this iPad from an architectural point of view that I can't fault. Morpholio Trace is number 1. I'm not sponsored in any way, shape or form by them. I've done a little bit of work just promoting them before because I really genuinely like the app, but nothing from the company. So Morpholio Trace is incredible. Adobe Photoshop is becoming more and more handy on the iPad just to simply fix up bits and pieces that aren't correct. And finally, Apple Notes. It is the simplest app of all time, but it's just so easy to draw and mark up on and sketch up a detail to send to somebody who needs to, or if you're in a meeting with a client and they're asking you how does this work in real life, you can sketch up that detail in seconds. And it just makes that experience of using the iPad as an architect and using the skills that you've developed over a lifetime so much easier to convey than they ever have before. Now, the simplest reason I recommend the iPad Pro over every other iPad is the screen. I didn't buy the 12.9, even though the screen is phenomenally better, but I think the screen on the 11-inch is so good that there's not much better that you can get. If you compare them side by side, yes, you'll see the difference. Yes, you'll know that the 12.9 is a better resolution display, but with the 11-inch, you're never going to know that. The screen is so good that it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter how good the screen gets beyond this. That 11-inch iPad Pro at 120 Hertz with full refresh rate and just how crystal clear it is can't be beaten. Now, what's my overall verdict? I guess if you're an architect or if you're an architecture student, it's yes and no. If you're an architecture student, I wouldn't recommend the iPad Pro or any other iPad for the simple fact it can't run any architectural software. So you're definitely going to need to run AutoCAD, ArchiCAD, Revit, potentially rendering softwares like Enscape, Twinmotion. You could go up to Unreal Engine. You could go all the way through to the high-end rendering packages that an iPad can more than likely handle, but just isn't there from a software point of view. If this changes in the near future with iPadOS 15 and they introduce something that allows you to run it like a laptop where you can actually run architectural software, throw that opinion out the window, go buy one today. Because as a product, it is phenomenal for all architecture students. I think it is perfect for anybody at university if it could do that. Until then, I'd still recommend a good laptop over an iPad, and then of course a desktop over everything else. Because as an architecture student, you just go through an abundance of different programs trying to get all that information down on paper, trying to get a good grade. As an architect, on the other hand, I think it's a fine line. Architects obviously have a variety of different roles, and an architect can be a completely different role in itself. You could be an architect that literally just sits at a computer and designs all day long. Or you could be an architect that liaises with clients, sits at the computer, does administrative roles, runs their own business, has more of a senior management role. If you have that senior management role where you are required to do some administrative things, some client liaising, and anything in between there, yes, hands down, iPad Pro with the new M1 chip is miles better than anything we've ever had before, and probably will be for a couple seasons now until they come up with an M5 or something like that, where it supersedes this incredibly. For everybody else that might be watching this video, it doesn't matter what position you're in or what industry you're in. If you're in some sort of leadership role, or if you're just a student that doesn't require any architectural programs, that's just gonna run Word, Excel, things like that, I think the iPad has just surpassed the laptop. Anyway, that's all for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you smash that subscribe button down below. Make sure you also hit that like button to help with the YouTube algorithm. And as always, I'll see you next Monday.